We're entering into the golden age for electric vehicles, but one of the things that's still holding EVs back from going fully mainstream is battery technology that makes the vehicles lighter, able to travel farther on a single charge, and be able to take a charge at a faster rate. One of the companies that's trying to break through that technology is QuantumScape. QuantumScape is set to report earnings on April 26th. Strangely, the company's been dead silent for about a month, which is abnormal heading into its earnings report. We're going to talk about what we're looking for when QuantumScape reports. I'm Jason Hall. This is The Smattering. Got Tyler Crow here with me to talk about it. Hey, Tyler.
I think you're underselling it a little bit. It's not just hasn't said anything in a month. The only thing they've said in the last month is, hey, we're going to report earnings soon.
February 15th reported its fourth quarter results for 2022. And then April 4th, when it announced the earnings that it's going to report on the 26th. No other announcements since January of any substantive nature. Now, of course, we did get a lot of information in that February report, but let's talk about this first of all, before we talk about what we're looking for. What's the big thing that we learned that we haven't heard more about?
This is where it gets a little funky because QuantumScape used to walk you through it with a press release. It seemed like once a week on whatever advancement they were making. It's a little hyperbole there, but they've been pretty prolific in letting us know what's been going on. The last update that we got was December 20th, when they said that they had sent some of their prototypes to automotive OEMs. So that's more than 4 months that these automotive OEMs have had to test these batteries, and we haven't heard anything back yet.
So Tyler, you and I did a video where we talked about QuantumScape sending batteries to the OEMs for validation, and that it was a big deal, and that it was also something that was quite impressive because of the fact that they did it essentially within the time frame that they said they were going to do, which is pretty rare. Companies usually, especially developmental stage companies like QuantumScape, they set pretty aggressive, optimistic timelines. And typically what that means is that things get delayed and then they finally happen, but they did it on time. But as you said, we've heard nothing it's basically been 4 months and we really haven't heard anything at all.
Yeah, and that's what I think for investors, it's peculiar, and I don't know what to make of it yet. There's one person on one shoulder saying, hey, this is a big deal, that they would let you know if something good was happening. If there was good news from any automotive OEM, they would have blasted that out in a press release. It's probably already written, and they're just waiting to hit the send button once they get the information back from one of their automotive partners.
There's a lot. The stakes are really high on this.
Stakes are high, and for all of the crap that the traditional legacy automakers got compared to the startups like Tesla for slow rolling electric vehicles, they're coming out now and they seem to be pretty popular products. Yeah, they took their time, but they wanted to get it right. And maybe that's just the same thing here, where they've got their samples and they're going to run them through the ringer and make sure they actually meet automotive standards, which tend to be very high. So those are the two sides talking to me. It could be a problem, or maybe automotives are just very careful. So
I have an alternative take that I'm going to share. I'm going to share at the end of the video. But before we do that, Tyler, what are you looking for when QuantumScape does report?
I would love to hear if there's actually any news from the automotive OEMs. I doubt it, just for the simple fact that they would have told us by now. But I would like to see what's going on with cash burn, what's going on with plans to further the development of these cells, even if they're being validated or there's things that could be working on. They could also be talking about how they plan to actually build these at scale, because building at scale is a whole different thing than building in a lab. That to me is almost as daunting of a challenge as it is to actually build the battery itself. We've seen a lot of companies come up with these wonderful ideas, but then when you actually have the rubber hit the road in terms of manufacturing it, they really tend to fall on their face.
Yeah, I think the good kind of analogy is the evolution of solar cells over time. We've seen incredibly high efficient solar cells for decades. The solar cells they use on things like satellites are incredibly high efficient, but they're also massively expensive. So driving down that cost
it can't build it at scale. It just can't, and you can't win.
You just absolutely can't do it. So I think number one, that's the first thing I want to learn more about is where are they in commercialization? Where are they at figuring out the automation side, the actual building the production lines to get volume of this, right? Because I think once you start showing you can generate volume, then you can start finding economies of scale to drive down the cost, which is the 1A. So learning a little bit more about where they are with that process, I think is really important. The second one for me, and you mentioned it, is cash burn. We need to understand, again, this is a company that's generating essentially no revenue at this point. So it's living off of its balance sheet, and getting a feel for where they are as those operating costs are probably going to start to crank up before we even talk about some of the capital expenditures they're going to have to make. Chances are they're going to be joint ventures with some of the OEMs just to fund the big capital spend to do that. So getting a feel for where those things are is really important. And then the last one, and this is the thing we kind of let off with, and this is my alternative take, it's finding out what the status is with the OEMs with validation. My guess is that they have some pretty hardcore confidentiality agreements with the OEMs that prevent them from talking about what the OEMs are telling them, because the OEMs, again, you have to think about it, as much as there's a race to get a new battery technology out there and win with that development, the automakers are trying to get to market, and that is a hyper competitive business, and they are doing everything they can to get ahead of their competitors without letting anything out. So that's my take, is that QuantumScape is limited based on their OEMs and not on anything that they would like to report themselves.